we've read through your study and everything, and we wanted to know what were the major strengths and weaknesses that you found within your study.
Which one was this? Is this the Sean Toth from 2005?
Yes, sorry.
Okay.
Unstable internet connection. Oh my god.
Yeah, that's okay. So that was a really long time ago, so I have to kind of think about it. So what were the strengths and weaknesses of the study?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I would say a strength of the study is we had a really robust sampling frame of all of the PRSSA membership. So that was good because a robust sampling frame is really hard to do. I would say another strength is that we asked people kind of questions that previous research hadn't really explored, right, in terms of their expectations. And then for weaknesses, I think, I kind of talked about this when I came and spoke to your class, but I think for weaknesses, one of them is obviously that there were a lot of email addresses that weren't really accurate. And the timing of that survey, because we did it so late in the spring semester, was really problematic because for students who had graduated, for whom we only had their campus email address, there was a high probability that they never actually got the invitation to participate, and so they didn't.
Okay, thank you. So just going off of what you found as being one of the weaknesses, what advice would you have for us when we're sending out our survey to go, how can we avoid that?
Okay. Well, tell me a little bit more about your survey. What are y'all sending out and to whom and what are you studying?
So the survey that we're actually going to be conducting is really good timing right now with the elections, because what we're trying to figure out is how many people are unfriending, either it be friends, families, significant others, and losing relationships on social media due to the election. So, for example, if you see one of your friends on social media talking about being a Trump supporter, what is the likelihood that you're going to unfollow and you will then unfriend that person? So
assuming you're not a Trump supporter.
Yeah.
Just the opposite party, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, so, and then how are you doing the research? Are you sending it, how are you getting people to participate?
So that was one of the things that we were hoping to try to get a little feedback on today.
Okay. So go ahead, Malia, and ask me your question again based on the weaknesses of my study.
Yeah, just to is it good to send out an email blast? Is it better to maybe post it on a Facebook page and then whoever could do it through a text message? Just kind of what do you think? How should we send it to get the best response, to get the most people to respond back?
Well, getting the most response is only part of the equation, right? So obviously y'all are going to be doing a convenience sample where you're just asking friends and family and acquaintances. The best way to do it would be to have an actual sampling frame, which is a list of people and their email addresses, and to somehow statistically randomly select parametric sample, right, instead of a non-parametric sample. So that would be ideal, is if somehow you could get a list of whoever it is you want to talk to, but it sounds like you probably won't have time for that, and you probably won't have resources for that, so you're really just asking on a convenience basis whoever is available. So if that's the case, then definitely getting as many participants as possible. I would say making sure that your participants are diverse in a variety of ways, right? So across the political spectrum, all age groups, different genders, etc. Because when you don't have the resources to do a statistically random sample, then the next best thing is to have a sample that is as diverse as possible. Does that help?
Yeah, could you give any advice on maybe if we do it in an email and we email it out, for the body paragraph or even the, I'm totally blanking on the word, the subject of the email, any tips on making them want to click it and actually participate?
I think that's that's a really good question. What is your research question? Is it just if people have unfriended their friends because of the election, or is that your basic research question?
That's what it's primarily going to be about, but it's also going to go into further more detail with, age groups, diversities, and things like that.
Well, I think because y'all are students and because most people want to try to help students, maybe a good subject line would just be, help students with a class project or something like that, because you have to kind of balance being accurate with what you're soliciting for, and then also not having that solicitation be a turnoff to people. Right. So like if your subject line is something like, do you hate Democrats or do you hate Republicans or whatever, then some people are just going to delete that without even looking at what it is. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah. Very sensitive time.
Yeah, it's a really sensitive time. The other challenge with emailing is first you have to get people's email address. And then assuming that a lot of people are going to be looking at their email from their smartphone, you have to make sure that the survey instrument is set up to work with the smartphone interface.
Yeah.
Right? Because otherwise you're asking people via email that they're going to see on their phone to go to a thing. And if it's not optimized for phone interface, then that's going to be really difficult and turn people off. So that's another thing. I'm also wondering, what about all the people who may have given up on friends and family because of politics, but who aren't on email?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Right. And so if you only use emails, then already you're kind of restricting who you have available to you, which would be people who are technologically competent to some extent, people who have good internet access from home. Right. And that already is maybe a really different group of people than your general people. So that might be something else to think about.
Very good point.
Those are all really good points that we want to make note of when we're doing our research. But bouncing back to your actual study, so with your study, based on your research, what type of changes in current curriculum would you say would be most effective for students in the PR industry?
Mm-hmm. I think it would be really helpful for everybody, not just in the students in the PR industry. I think it would be really helpful for all students to have kind of a critical thinking diversity kind of course, right? Where we look at all different kinds of demographic variables and all different kinds of impact that has on people. Like this particular study is a good example of how gender identity really impacts people's perceptions and what salaries they expect. But there's also a whole host of other things that we didn't really measure that could be measured right now. So I think that would be one thing that I would suggest.
And then also with that, despite your findings, what do you think do you think women are on the right track to make an impact over the men?
Well, I think that's a really good question. And I think if you had asked me this question a month ago, my answer would have been different. But right now, what we're seeing because of COVID and because of the political landscape is that things are really hard for women right now. Right? I mean, things are hard for a lot of people, and one of those groups of people is women. Between the Supreme Court thing and, and because of all of studies showing that the pressures of COVID and the lack of childcare and people having to homeschool their children, I mean, all of those things are disproportionately affecting women, right?